Hey guys, welcome to another Record Live. It's great to have you here on a Thursday afternoon. We hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. And if you're tuning in after the fact, we love to have you on board as well. It's like, comment below and engage with us because this is a real community we have here at Record Live and we're trying to foster that as much as possible. And today, like every other week, we have an amazing special guest and we're super excited for Pastor Tulaga Aiolupotea. I just get that?
You did good. You did well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's a privilege and a blessing to have you here, Tulaga. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's cool. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to talk about creativity and your unique ministry and art and faith and all that good stuff. But before we dive into sort of more, theoretical kind of talk or maybe practical talk, who knows? Do you want to just introduce yourself? You're the pastor of Invercargill Church, you mentioned, but what does your day-to-day ministry look like? What's your family life like? Just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am a family man of 5. I have 5 kids. They're all under 8. So, yeah.
My goodness.
Oh, wow. 3 in school. Invercargill has their own Adventist school as well, so it's a primary school. So hopefully we have a high school, but I guess that's part of the dream. My wife is one of the teachers there, and she teaches, I guess the middle years in terms of primary school. So she's amazing when it comes to teaching. So it's kind of like a bonus when she looks after the kids in terms of teaching and communicating. But for me, I speak with my hands, not so much in discipline, but just letting them know what I'm talking about, what I'm up to. So she's doing all of that. So at the moment, they're probably, all picked up, ready for another day tomorrow. So, I'm a pastor. Really enjoy what I do. I pastor a second church. There's 2 churches there. One of the other pastors looking after the other church, so they named each other after their street, Wicklow, and I got Doon Street, and so that's how we differentiate each other. My church is multicultural, such a vibrant city. A lot of members there in attendance. They come from all over the place. So we got people from the islands, from South America, locals, and so so there's quite a variety of diverse bunch of our church, but I love what I do, just ministering with different people. And it's such a good fun being a minister down here. Small city, but different, but loving the vibes here. So yay.
Oh, Ash Kane just commented, Invercargill represents. So you've got some fans here. Some fellow fans.
Yeah, deep.
Yeah. And you cope with the cold down there, Tulaga, because I know you're close to the Antarctic there.
I just think New Zealand's just cold. New Zealand's just straight cold. Yeah, and I think in different parts of New Zealand they have their unique touch on what's cold. But down here, I think when you're outside, you bring the cold in, and you can actually still feel it while you're indoors. And so I thought the cold down in Invercargill has a grip type of cold. So it's just cold, but it's it's an interesting city. Since Invercargill is really, really cold, people tend to stay indoors. And so they're quite intimate in what they do. So their conversations, their homes are more places that you want to hang out more than going out into the city. And so it's a very unique type of culture when it comes to a really cold city. So it does something to the place.
I feel like I wouldn't survive in Invercargill. I hate the cold. I'm always cold. So you don't like the cold. I don't like the cold. Jared, do you like the cold?
No, my wife.
None of us like the cold.
My wife is from Wellington, like Tulaga. So they grew up in Wellington, and she quite likes cold weather for some reason. She doesn't like summer, so
Oh.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Must give her memories. Yes.
So Tulanga, I have to make a disclaimer at this point. I am representing some gear that this is your brand. Can you tell us, this says Word Riders for those who don't speak graffiti. What is Word Riders as an introduction to sort of some of what you do and how you got into that? Just tell us what the brand Word Riders is about for you.
Oh, Word Riders, what you got there is basically, it's not really a brand or a label, but I guess it's whatever you want to call it. I really don't mind. But my intentions was it was a uniform for myself and my crew or my small group that I do life with, and we called ourselves Word Riders. And so what you got there is a tag style font, and we thought that basically is the basics that form graffiti. Probably explain that a little bit more later, but that's pretty much the framework, the skeleton of the whole thing. And so we labeled ourselves Word Riders, and Word Riders actually means because a graffiti artist is known as a writer. And so we write words. So all the pretty pictures and stuff like that, that's basically technically not a graffiti artist, but it's basically someone who does street art, who just loves pictures and images. But for myself, I love letters and words. And so a graffiti artist is a writer. And because I'm a Christian, I think graffiti has a lot in common with the word. We are people of the word in terms of Christians, but me as a graffiti artist, I'm also a person of the word too. And so we have a lot in common. And so I thought we will, with the crew and my young people that we started off with, we thought we'll call ourselves, hey, why don't we call ourselves Word Riders? And I think the kids derived it from some sort of rap group. I can't remember. Rough Riders. Yeah, Rough Riders. And I remember Rough Riders. I think for those who are from the 90s, late 90s or early 2000s. Yeah, and I thought, okay, let's roll with that. Word Riders, Rough Riders has that same sort of sound. But yeah, so we thought we represent ourselves as Christians, but also people of the word, whatever it can do to encourage others about who we are. Yeah.
I really love it how, any sort of logo or any brand name or whatever you want to call it, as we've said, that has a double meaning is my favorite. So hats off to you. It's a great label. But I really love it how you mentioned the boys and the kids or whatever, how they sort of chose it and whatever. Do you want to just run us through what that is? So you sort of mentor these boys in graffiti art. What does your ministry look like?
Well, I take advantage of graffiti because graffiti with young people, it's cool. And most of them probably tagged, but never really did a piece or did some sort of classic graffiti art on the wall or on a piece of paper. And so with these kids, because I naturally gravitate to young adults or late teens, and so I tend to hang out with them more often. And so I thought, being a graffiti artist, it's something I always wanted to do, and it's become part of my ministry. And I just thought, hey, these two actually link up, pretty much like Lego. Being a Christian is like Lego, man. You just put different pieces together and you create something, and you can use the same piece that was a house. Now it's a car. And so all these pieces that you do with young people, myself, church, mom, dad, my wife and kids, and you put all these pieces together and you don't just leave it there. You just change it. And so that's what happened with graffiti and the kids. And most of the kids don't do anything, mostly the ones that are really too old to be saying these words. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Yeah. Their age group should be at least 14 up. Yeah. They should start thinking, oh man, I can't wait to do this, can't wait to go to college, can't wait to go to uni to do all of these cool stuff. And so I just thought, man, why don't we start using using graffiti as a platform to create something within themselves. And so I'm really teaching them the principles of graffiti rather than the graffiti as an art form, to hopefully spark something up and say, man, through this graffiti experience, I actually want to be a counselor. I actually want to do something with myself, whether it's a career or a hobby or just basically creating a recipe for tonight's dinner. And so, yeah, it's that wide. And so our kids, we decided to become a small group. And so no matter where I go as a minister, creating community is a huge element of graffiti. And graffiti comes from another culture, and it comes from a culture called hip hop. And so that's a community. It's a massive community. It's a nation. It's international. I don't know what to call it, but it's so massive that that's an element that I've taken off and attached it with another piece to be able to connect with young people so that they can say, hey, this is better than nothing for them. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit about your how you got into sort of this hip hop nation, a little bit about the background of that. But before I do that, just want to touch on the kids that you're talking about, the small group and the people that you're mentoring. What sort of skills, apart from the art or the physical graffiti skills, what are some of those skills that you see them taking away from these interactions? Like, what do you see them growing and developing in?
With graffiti, there are steps like sketching, designing, coming up with ideas, and so planning, basic planning, and it's life skills like basic planning. So when you plan to do a sketch, if you're doing a letter T, you got to think about what T looks like. And so when you do that, when you get a blank piece of paper, those sort of skills that you wanted to sort of like help them see that. So when you go to school, because they're all school kids. So when you go to school, what's your plan? What does it look like? And so when you do that, and when I first sit down with them, I give them a blank piece of paper and I tell them to do exactly what this looks like, or an image or a picture, or just tell them to do a letter T. And I notice their personalities come through. One kid will probably, I remember sitting down with a kid and he was, I told him to draw a picture of a ice cube, a cupcake. And so the person went through 4 pieces of paper, and each of the 4 pieces of paper showed me the personality of that person. And they only just did a few little sketches or lines, and they didn't finish. They weren't happy with it. So very unsatisfied. But one person just went hard out. The paper was too small and got 2 pieces of paper. All these pieces of paper really determines the kind of person that they are. Some of them are quite anxious. Some of them are free. And so all of those steps from sketching, planning, designing helps them to know how to plan stuff in life, how to deal with their emotions, skills that they can learn. And it's basically graffiti. It could be anything, but just using those life skills that they can gain can actually go further than just learning the art form, but also learning the art form of life at the same time. Yeah, which is beneficial for them. Yeah,
that's so cool. Like, I think everyone would agree that, you know, social media, distractions, movies, there's never been more stuff that we can consume, right? And you mentioned, you know, these kids that don't know what they want to do with their life and they're confused and whatever the case may be. But what is it about graffiti? Like, is it the fact that you're sort of working with your hands and you have time to think? Or is it the fact that you're forced to sort of think about topics? Like, what is it about graffiti that really helps with that process, as opposed to something like, I don't know, knitting, or I don't know, maybe it's the same.
Oh, well, you know, it's a whole lot of things, because you're an artist and it's really hard to put things in a box. And so questions like that really, yeah, I get nervous, because it's really hard to box these sort of things, why we do what we do as in terms of art as crafts. I guess the first part is mainly it's more an emotional experience. To start with, this is how I feel today. I feel pretty upset about something, and so my graffiti might reflect that sort of feeling, and one thing leads to another. But I do, mainly now when I do graffiti, as opposed to when I first started because I wanted to reach people for Jesus.
Okay.
But that changed. It hasn't gone from it, but it's kind of expanded more, and it's become more of not so much a tool, but also a lifestyle. Yeah, because that's how I just opened up a toolbox, and I thought, man, I haven't used this tool in ages, which was graffiti. And I thought I'll use it, not really thinking about what I was doing. And so now I'm really intentional about how I feel, how I do certain colors, styles of letters, and so forth. And at the moment, there was this lady, I did a big piece on Tay Street. Tay Street is one of the main streets in Chicago. And I did a really big, massive piece. It's like 8 panels wide. So it's really massive. And so I did that, and a lady came up and she goes, can you do something like that for me? And I wasn't really intentionally thinking about that, because I didn't really think that, I'm going to do this to hopefully promote the name of Jesus. And so it just came out natural. And the lady came up and she said, hey, give me a call. And I don't usually ask them to do what they want to do. I say, if you want to give me a wall or something to do, as long as I can do what I want to do. She goes, yeah, you do it. And so I realized when I walked into her house, she showed me what she wanted to do. And then straight away she goes, what do you do for a living? And I said, oh man, I'm a pastor. She goes, what? That's crazy. And I said, yeah. What does that surprise you? And she goes, I've never met a pastor or minister priest that does this sort of thing. And so I realized this art form has to become a part of my lifestyle in order for me to be able to connect with them more than just a tool, because it becomes unnatural. And so we connected, and I realized graffiti has become an assistant to me as the main storyteller rather than the art form itself. And so the connection between that, love the fact that it's open, it's public, it's in your face, and being able to connect with people is such a huge vibe for me. So fully love it, man. And so, yeah, we get new friends, new community, and just meeting new people through this has really made me realize it just can't be more than just a tool. It has to be a part of who I am emotionally as well as spiritually. Yeah.
Tulaga, a lot of Christians might be uncomfortable with the concept of graffiti. They will say, oh, it's vandalism. It's a crime. It's a criminal activity. Only, that probably growing up, I had that perspective of graffiti, like, oh, it's only things that aren't supposed to be there. That's graffiti. It's someone, vandalizing something else for someone. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how, I imagine that when you were growing up too, you might have been starting to walk into that community, but at the same time, you may have encountered resistance from Christians around you, or you may have perceived yourself as doing the wrong thing at that time. Can you tell us on your journey now you see, hey, this is a great ministry tool like you've described, but how does that happen? And for those wondering, like, how does he do graffiti as a ministry? It's a crime, it's wrong. Can you just explain to them your journey, your evolution in thinking about that?
Yeah. I guess first and foremost, before I forget, sometimes I do, graffiti is not a crime, but it is a crime if you do it on a property without permission. Your vandalism is basically putting your artwork, putting something where it doesn't belong. Unfortunately, I do understand that, graffiti and vandalism have a lot to do with each other, but they're actually completely different. There are some graffiti artists who actually believe true graffiti is vandalism. And so whatever you want to call it, that's cool. But for me, it's moral reasons. And obviously because I'm a Christian, I just basically want to ask permission. So I don't do it legally anymore. I mean, I don't do it illegally anymore, but I do it. It's just, if you see a wall that's right in the middle of a busy street, ask the guy who owns it, and boom, you can do whatever you want to do with it. But graffiti in itself is an art form, and so that's not vandalism. That there is not a crime, but yeah, and so that's basically that sort of. Hopefully, that makes a lot of sense. But at first, I still kind of feel funny when I do graffiti in public because I still have because it's only been what 3-4 years since I've done it again. And it still feels kind of funny when I do it because now I'm conscious about what people think. Will a cop pull me over and ask me the same question? Are you doing this legally or illegally, or what are you doing? More likely, if you do it in public, cops no longer come up to you because I guess in today's world, graffiti, depending on the city and how it views graffiti art is, we don't often get a cop coming up or anyone like that. But I have to say this and to make it super clear, but graffiti is basically not for you. I actually do graffiti to communicate with a graffiti artist or those who like graffiti. You don't have to be a graffiti artist to be to like graffiti. The graffiti world is basically people who like it, people who follow it, people who use it and do it, whether it's legally or illegally. Basically have them in mind. God put place that within myself and say, go get my people, go and communicate the gospel to them because you speak that language. And I said, Lord, I don't know how to speak that language anymore. It's been a while. It was a burning bush experience. And then the Lord said, come on, man, you've been doodling at Avondale College for 4 years, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I have. Because Avondale class can be interesting. Can be interesting and sometimes. And so I've been doodling for 4 years. And the Lord said, man, I guess it's time to bring back and start communicating to others. But for those who may not fully understand graffiti art, graffiti is about words. And because we as Christians, we are believers of the Word of God, I also believe that graffiti artists only deal with words. And I thought that's a good piece to put together and say, man, I want to communicate with people, to create conversations with others. And so my specific audience is the Hebrew nation, which is, I think, graffiti artists who do art in that sort of way. The cool thing about that, just like I shared in Tay Street when I did that bombing, I also connected with people who weren't really interested in graffiti. And so not only I'm specifically targeting people who I have a passion and have a heart and love for, which are graffiti artists, I'm also able to go out wide. I moved from the Hebrew nation and I'm being a pastor. Sorry, man. This is the language that we. I'm moving from the Hebrew nation to the Gentiles. And so this lady that came, she was a Gentile. She knew nothing about graffiti, but she said, "I went to Europe and I went to Germany and I saw this graffiti piece. It moved me, and I want you to do that at the back of my house on my fence. So when I look out and have a cup of coffee in the lounge when I'm watching TV, I can remember my experience in Germany." And I thought, yay, I can do that. However, but as long as it's coming from myself, she goes, no, I just want you to do you, do you. And so what I did was I did the word seek. So the word seek comes from Luke. Jesus came to seek, or the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Mm-hmm. And so she said to me, what does that word say? Seek. And then I just shared with her a Gentile version of the verse, rather than just telling her as it is written in the book of Luke. And so we just connected. We are friends, and not only that, it just gave an indication that God wants me to go out wide. rather than specifically talking and communicating to street artists or graffiti artists. Yeah. And so,
but Tulaga, you gave up graffiti because you believed, you were convicted in some senses that God didn't want you to do it anymore.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, it was evil. When I became an Adventist, I left everything: cold turkey, drugs, alcohol, and even hip hop and graffiti. But I praise God for hip hop in Aotearoa because it gave me an identity. I was a Kiwi-born Samoan. I wasn't feeling the Samoan culture and its vibes. I honestly just didn't connect with it, the language, everything. Didn't connect with the Adventist message and its culture. I genuinely just thought it's not for me. And I'm glad I asked those questions, so I'm able to sort of like not fake it till I make it. Definitely not into that philosophy, but I just wanted to keep it real. And then I fell into hip hop, and hip hop spoke a language that explained my experience. So I got into all this hip hop stuff, breakdancing, DJing, rhyming, aka rapping. And then I fell in love with graffiti because it was natural. It came out as a part of, because I come from a family of artists. I come from a family of who are very creative. And so that was natural. And so that's how graffiti became a part of my life and a huge part of what it is. I actually forgot what the question was, but yeah.
So it became your identity. It gave you a community and an identity. But so you mentioned you gave it up because you felt like once you did come back to the church, you felt like it was a problem. But tell us briefly what that transition back to now using graffiti as a tool for ministry. Like you said, it's your language. It's re-establishing connection with that community that you left when you became a Christian. What did that process look like?
I guess finding that God moment, I found that graffiti art had a lot in common with Christianity. And just as I shared earlier was the word. And because I when I'm bored, I doodle graffiti. I just tag. I've never stopped that. It was just, when I get bored. So I tapped into that boredom and created that boredom into a belief. And I realized everything that we do, like hip hop and graffiti, I had to find a God gem in there that does not go against what I believe in, who I am, and what I'm about, especially when it's Christ-centered. And so I realized that out of all the 4 elements of hip hop, graffiti is the only one that's clean, that doesn't cause controversy, but at the same time enough controversy to elicit questions, a conversation like this, to help us understand, okay, what's up with this graffiti, vandalism, and the gospel? And so being able to tap into those areas, so hopefully that people who were once passionate about collecting stamps, that there is a God moment, that it's not as boring as people think. It actually has a place where God can connect with other people who may not be stamp collectors, but also people who actually are interested. And so, it just gave me that moment where and another thing as well, when I became an Adventist, I was a good follower. I was cloned very well. I was super cloned. I wore what everybody wore, spoke like everybody spoke. I did I studied the Bible like everybody else. Their style, everything was everyone looked the same. Everyone sounded the same. Everyone preached the same, and everyone had the same message, which was cool. But I kind of felt, man, I don't fit very well into this box. And so I thought, I'll ask God himself and say, where do you want me to fit in to this whole scheme of this Adventist world without losing our identity? And I realized creativity is not an ability, it's an identity. So that gave me the permission to sort of like, okay, I want to do graffiti without any casualties. So
I love that.
Good
I love
time.
I love that point about identity, and it seems like it's always been part of you, doodling. I relate to that. Like, I feel like I doodle in every staff meeting. It's just like, you just can't stop. It's just kind of like this creativity pours out of you. But I loved your point about, the Hebrews or the Jews and the Gentiles, and how graffiti is for graffiti artists and graffiti appreciators, but you also sort of minister to the wider community. And one of the comments we had on the post to just like announce that this was happening was from Kirsten Lundquist, who says, ask him about his creative Sabbath at Capital Church. So that's what I'm doing. Tell me about your creative Sabbath.
Capital Church is the first Adventist church, I believe, that asked a graffiti artist to do a graffiti workshop as part of a initiative of theirs, because I believe, I could be wrong, I believe Aotearoa hip hop in New Zealand started in Wellington. So it was an honor for me to go back to the city where it all started. And the church is situated smack bang in the CBD of Wellington. So what we did together was I used graffiti to help them understand how they can use their creativity as an identity, not so much an ability. Because sometimes when we use the word art and creativity, we always think as painters, sculpture artists, and photographers. I think if God is the ultimate creator, I guess we have some sort of reflection or some sort of creative juice as the image of God. And so everyone is creative. And so I'm just using graffiti as a platform together with Capital Church to help them utilize not only their creativity, but to find something that they are passionate about. And I also shared with Capital City Church, based on your relationship with God, God speaks through your passions to be able to come up with something. So we did so much. So they started to draw, they started doing their tag names. They came up with a tag name, their names, and they did together as a group, they did one big massive piece of Jesus. And they colored it all in. They learned the art form of graffiti, spray can handling, and how all of that ties up to becoming a bridge, not only to their own creativity, but to others, and how they can connect with others and understand that graffiti is here to stay. It's part of a city. A city without graffiti, it really doesn't look like a city. And so understanding that world so that you and they, Capital Church, big ups to Capital Church, the first church ever to host and do this sort of urban ministry type of thing through graffiti art. And so had so much fun, and I hope they had a lot of fun as well. Which is really innovative.
We have a couple of comments here from Tiani Page. She says she loves your raw honesty and approach to creativity in sharing faith. So,
I know her. She's the sand artist. Yeah.
Oh, I've heard about you, Tiani. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I've watched her at Hillview, my old church. I did practice there. Much love to you guys. And I watched her, and the way she did it, I just thought, man, how is it that this could be only seen and used in such a small area? And I'm just thinking, man, the gospel can be used creatively. And I just thought, man, graffiti reminded me, what she was doing reminded me of graffiti, not really thinking that one day is going to come back up as a communication tool to the world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Shelley Poole says, create in the kitchen, the car, the street, the gallery, the home, the garden, all of the places. So I think she agrees with you there. Creativity is not just, a paintbrush. And Nat Tan says, keep tagging for the kingdom. So support here.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love the terminology that graffiti artists use is tagging. Tagging, sorry for those who've been tagged on. Some people may not, have like taggers. But if you don't get your tagging sorted, if you don't get your tag right, your style, your graffiti is really, which is the body, which is the makeup, your skin, it's gonna really look pretty silly. But the tag is basically a person's identity, who they are. And so this T-shirt here belongs to someone. Her name is Maranatha, and she is about the second coming. And her name is in Samoan. Maranatha comes from the word Maranatha. And she, every top has a tag, the size that fits. And so I have a tag name, you have a tag name, and our tag name is basically Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And so that same sort of concept was already embedded in the graffiti world. So I just thought, man, that's a language that they already spoke. So they will make great Christians in their own way if they were to find out and tap into those areas. And so what's your tag name? What tag are you wearing? Not everything is made in China that makes you Chinese, But I guess that will give some sort of inspiration for those who are looking for their tag, who they're about, their identity. Hopefully that this conversation will create something innovative as you share Jesus in your own creative way. Yeah.
I have a little bit of a curly question for you, Tulaga, so don't feel obliged to answer if you think it'll be too much trouble. But you spoke about, there are two things that you said that I want to sort of bring together and just let's unpack a little bit. You mentioned how when you first came back into the church, you grew up in the church, but it wasn't feeling right. And then when you came back, you felt like a clone, like everybody seemed to fit into a cookie cutter mold, and everyone was expected to dress the same, be the same, talk the same. And you were, I guess, you had to modify yourself to fit into that clone. But then you reflected on the creator being, we all have creative juice inside. We all should be creative. We have creativity in us because we're in the image of God. Do you think that sometimes our church gets it wrong when we squeeze out people's creativity to make everyone fit into a certain identity that we think is the right way to be? Is there more space needed in the Adventist movement for creativity?
Like I said, man, creativity is not an ability. It's an identity, and that comes from being created in God's image. And so I wrestled with that and realized, coming into the church, it felt unnatural being uniformity at its best when it comes to being an Adventist. You're not an Adventist if you don't look, sound, eat, and feel the same way as everybody else. But when I realized that, man, if we are all different, right? And we tell people, we preachers preach to people, you have a gift and a talent, you have spiritual gifts. And I realized that the Adventist church, how it started, came from someone's creativity. The whole culture came from someone's idea. And so I thought we already have that base as Adventists to have that. But because we're all different, someone dominated a style. We have a style of Adventism. We have a style of Christianity. Adventist is a style of Christianity. Someone decided one day, man, we're going to have Sabbath on Saturday. That's radical. That's creative. That's real. That we moved further. And how we kept it became a creativity. How we keep the Sabbath is really based on how we creatively interpret this scripture. And so we are so individual and so no one else like us. The more copies we make, we lose resolution. I started losing resolution big time. I'm thinking I'm tired of looking and sounding, and I was a good mimic, man. But then I realized, man, how can I tap into the message that, how can you be yourself, and how can you love yourself selflessly? Yeah, because we always tend to naturally love ourselves. So we try and do things that we want, you know. It's not about you, it's about God. It's not about what they want, it's about what the church wants. But I realize when you look at the structure as a church, everybody's creativity is based on the departments and the committees of the church. It limits people. We have children's ministry, we have men's ministry, women's ministry, we have all these departments, and they frustrate me because that's what creativity looks like. And I'm thinking, it should be the other way around. And so why can't we have a graffiti art department? Or can't we have, you know what I'm saying? So like, I was thinking, I'm not really good at preaching, but I'm a minister. I have to do it. It's part of my job. And so a deacon, what does a deacon do? I was thinking, okay, I don't have the skills of a deacon. So you just weed yourself in that box or that square or the squircle. And so the church is made up of these departments. And I'm just thinking, man, whoever came up with that idea, man, praise God. At least you started some sort of structure or organization of a church. But I believe that we're trying to fit everybody into these committees and these departments, and that's the creativity of the church. I'm just thinking it should be the other way around. And so hopefully this conversation will help us to realize you yourself are it. You are the best resource that God can actually use to communicate to others with your unique gifts, your unique creativity. So yeah, for whatever it's worth, that's the struggle.
I think a lot of people probably will resonate with that because they haven't necessarily found a space in church that they can be creative in or be themselves. And they felt like, if I'm not a singer or a preacher, I can't really contribute to the church. And we have a lot of people who sit in our church pews and just watch the show. And perhaps they would not be doing that, as if I understand you correctly. Perhaps if we could find spaces to give them a safe space to be creative in their worship of God and in their contribution to the church family, perhaps they would be more passionate about being engaged in the movement again. They would have their ministry language and be able to insert themselves into God's ministry, God's kingdom going forward.
Absolutely. And I think the church doesn't know what to do with us. Yeah, we chuck artists into doing PowerPoints. We chuck guys who are sound engineers, who have good sound, who can do music. They do the sound stuff. And so once again, they get boxed into whatever these little boxes that make up the church body. But I also have to mention that creativity could never be, it could never, become something if you don't have that sort of wisdom. So there are so many musicians who don't know how to play an instrument. Nowadays, you can just put a drum beat together or put some guitar tunes or some strings, and you can create a song. And you can actually sing with your flat voice and tune it up, and you can make a song or an album or set songs without having the skill of singing and an instrument. So that requires a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And how to create something out of nothing. So we're made out of dirt. So what's the dirt do you have that is insignificant to the Adventist church, and make something out of it without bend the rules without breaking the rules. In other words, extend the boundaries on the right side of the boundaries. And sometimes, and nobody likes change. And so if people don't like change, at least enhance what already exists. And so if it's the deacon department, and if that's super boring, enhance it. At least creatively find something and revamp this amazing ministry that's once started in the early church has become something that is like nothing. What's going on here? And so resurrect something out of dirt. So what's the dirt that you have in place that you can create something and mold something and say, hey, this reflects who I am as a person, that is individual, that is no one like me. that I'm cloning out of myself rather than trying to make someone look like me. And so, yeah.
Just to add on to that, Tulaga, I was interviewing a pastor the other day who kind of was saying a similar thing to what you're saying. You mentioned, deaconess, deacons, it's kind of a boring job, no one's inspired. And, maybe, and I think the problem, especially with creatives, it's like you mentioned the sound engineer, you've got a really talented sound mixer or whatever, and they just get put on like the microphones. And like, that's fine, but they're not feeling inspired because that's just such a simple job, But what if, and this is the thing, because if that person isn't inspired to do that role, then why do you actually have that role? If nobody wants to be a singer, then why do you have singers in your church? If nobody wants to be a deaconess, why do you even have that? Create a role that they actually want to do. Change the label, do something different. So I think what you're saying is just spot on. I love
it. Do something different. Different and new.
Absolutely. How are you implementing that in your local church? Or have you, is it just way easier said than done? Is it just a struggle, or?
Nah, it's at the moment, I've only been there for almost 2 years. Okay. And don't walk into my church and thinking everyone's wearing Adidas and everyone's all sort of like, what up, pastor? No way. But the same principle, I want Invercargill Church as a whole to be unique in their own way, finding their specified gift as a church as a whole and also individually. And so at the moment, I'm slowly with the church trying to find their dirt and create something out of nothing. And I want Invercargill to be a church that is different from anybody else, not for the sake of being different, but because they are different, it is enough to be able to attract those, not to the church community, but vice versa, to ask the question, what makes Jesus worth dying for? And if that is through their creative identity rather than their ability to vacuum the church and unlock and lock the church with all that insignificance of the church being as a community unknown to the community. So slowly but surely, hopefully they will find their jam and be able to sort of like say, this is what makes us unique for Jesus. And not only that, but are able to connect with real people who have real issues, who do need Jesus. And I always remember when I finished with my workshops with my young people, or anyone that comes into my courses, is basically, it's not about the craft, it's about the Christ. And if we lose that focus, then creativity is just a cool hobby that looks real cool, but not cool enough to be able to fulfill the purpose and the reason why we exist as a church, to find people for Jesus in all aspects of the world. So, and graffiti is just one of the 6 million ways to win people to Jesus. Yeah.
That's an awesome sort of place to wind up. I just want to acknowledge, John's been commenting here in the comments. He said he was squeezed out of his creativity at church. And I just want to acknowledge John, and that can happen, and that it's not ideal. And we're sorry to hear about that, John, but hopefully you can find some way to express yourself in other forums or in the future, and to be true to God's creativity that he's given you. But thank you, Tulaga, for joining us today. We have run out of time, and we don't want to keep you from your beautiful family for too much longer. But is there any parting sort of words you'd like to leave us with, or something that we haven't quite touched on yet? And maybe tell people how they can keep up with your work. Do you have an Instagram page or anything like that can keep people informed about what you're doing?
Yeah, I guess if you want to follow me on my Instagram, which is Graphotics Artworks, I guess you guys can pop that up. Like I said before, if you've lost your creativity or you're looking for your creativity, it's a part of who you are as a Christian. You know, God is our creator, and he made us to be creative. And so it's really hard to lose your unique creativity. And so it's there, but you got to find it. You got to pray for it. You got to look for it. And so if you're that passionate about it, you'll definitely find it. So keep grinding and keep squeezing as much creativity as you can as a church or as a person. So thank you, Adventist Record, for this opportunity. Much love to you guys. And yeah, all the best. God bless everyone.
Thank you, Tulaga. God bless you too. And no worries. It was a pleasure to have you. Bye, everyone.